So when I first was attacked by this website, RipOffReport.com, I did what most people would do, is say, what is this site and who started this site? So that brings us to the point of Ed Magedson, okay, who I've called in previous videos Rippy, right? He likes to proclaim, or he's actually the self-appointed consumer watchdog, okay? But is that really true? I mean, what's the background of this guy? And when you dig into it, you know, he was born in 1952, so typically he was in that generation during the 60s where they're trying to change the world to a certain degree. He was on a flower farm and tried selling flowers, and it just seemed like he kept on tripping through life and was always wronged through life until he ends up in Phoenix, Arizona. So he becomes this self-anointed savior, and the sad thing is he's actually leading this blind army down a road of perdition, which was actually stated in an internet blog, which is a classic line for him. And almost like a Jim Jones, he's getting everyone to drink his purple Kool-Aid. So what he does is he becomes this predator through dishonest means. He inflates and manipulates complaints. Then the contacts of these complaints seem to be no one. So he creates vast sums of money on these fictitious people with fictitious complaints. Now, in my case, I know who the complaints were, but it was his site that utilized it. Now, you may ask, why is it that I'd be going after Eddy, Rippy, Magedson instead of the people that actually put this defamation on his site? And the reason is because I know who these people are. They're very shallow, inept people who have no life. They were terminated because they're just terrible at their profession. So they got to deal with that themselves. They know why they were fired, and they know why they're useless. And they got to come to grips with it and find a way to make a living. One day I will publish their names, but right now I'm actually pointing at the person and the website that allowed these shallow, inept people to slander my name. Because without him, they would have never gotten to this point of actually trying to destroy my life. So let's look at Eddy. And if you look at this RipOff Report website, it's notorious for publishing undocumented and anonymous complaints about any company or any individual. But according to Eddy, the founder and editor, which is really a laugh, how this guy is considered an editor, but the website can publish any kind of complaints or negative reviews, which he refers to as reports, to make it sound really official. Because it's, in his opinion, it could be protected by the U.S. federal law known as the Communications Decency Act. And we went way into that in the first couple of videos, so I won't go there again. So even if a report is false or defamatory, Eddy usually refused to edit his webpage unless the named company or individual pays him several thousands of dollars to repair their reputations. So let's walk through where the legal system is entering into this. So when Eddy puts all this stuff on his internet site to try to make himself look credible, he writes things that, based on the protection extended by the CDA, RipOff Report has successfully defended more than 20 lawsuits in both state and federal courts. Each time the courts have consistently found that the CDA shields RipOff Report from any claim seeking to treat it as the speaker or publisher of information posted by a third party. You can always sue the author if you want, but you can't sue RipOff Reports. The author is often anonymous, but that is another story. Well, let's look at what the Federal District Court of Utah had to say about this, and they do not agree. According to the order denying motion to alter judgment filed in August 27th of 2015, the court found that the website is not a neutral publisher and publishes negative content, so it can potentially get more by working through companies and people named in the reports to have the complaint edited and turn the report into an advertisement. That's interesting. The other arguments that Eddy claimed was the court has misapplied the Communications Decency Act, but the controlling authority of the 10th Circuit Court stated that the service provider is responsible for developing offensive content, and in quotes, if it in some way specifically encourages development of what is offensive about the content, which is what Eddy has created that website to do. He encourages it. He does not want fair comments. Matter of fact, his site refuses anything that may be positive. But let's stay on Eddy at this point. He has this typical persona of people in their drive for power. They're kind of predispositioned towards corruption. And if you look at his background, it's documented that he has had run-ins with the law and law enforcement. If you look at public records, it shows he has a pattern of criminal practice and intent. He has had many run-ins, and unfortunately, instead of having a stand-up position and actually coming and facing what his website does, like a real criminal, he runs and hides. He has already lost at least 2 lawsuits, neither of which he has either paid for or appealed, and is being sought for service in several others. He just goes into hiding. Here are just a few of the places where you can see what Eddy is all about. And it isn't a message about love, reconciliation, or turning the other cheek. And I'm going to list all these links. Now, what's important, and the reason I want to get into this, is what are we fighting? You know, I keep on saying we're fighting to regulate and we're fighting to amend the Act of 1996, but in reality, what we're really fighting is a criminal, you know. But this criminal is actually highlighting a high deficiency in the internet. So to a certain degree, we're kind of glad he is who he is, because it really puts a spotlight on how the internet needs to be regulated, and it needs to be regulated by a group like the FCC. But I'm going to go into a couple of lawsuits that he was involved in. So here is one legal case, and it was the Federal Appeal Court of San Francisco that stated the following, and it's on page 4 of that filing. The underlying attempted racketeering extortion claim alleged that RipOffReport.com, under the company Eccentric, attempted to extort money by encouraging third parties to post negative reviews, manipulating the posts to highlight negative reviews, and to further highlight the negative reviews if the business posted rebuttals, and then charging high fees to turn the negative into a positive. The claim was tenable because the district court had previously held that similar allegations stated an extortion claim against RipOffReport.com in the Highside Corp versus BadBusinessBureau.com in the District of Arizona. Now, in that case, the holdings that the allegations that RipOffReport.com created and solicited false defamatory complaints against businesses and then charged $50,000 in monthly fees or on other times $1,500 to remove or stop posting the complaints stated in the extortion claim, right? So this whole idea that Ed Magedson says, well, it won't be removed because it's freedom of speech. What's really interesting is how Ed is viewing all this. And he said in an interview with Forbes, he believes that any person could kill him at any time. That's really interesting to make that statement. Since Magedson claims that RipOff Report is a credible website, it is unclear why any person should kill him. The other interesting part is Eddy does not disclose his net worth. This is all about the money with this guy. So when Eddy puts all this stuff on his internet site to try to make himself look credible, he writes things that, based on the protection extended by the CDA, RipOff Report has successfully defended more than 20 lawsuits in both state and federal courts. Each time the courts have consistently found that the CDA shields RipOff Report from any claim seeking to treat it as the speaker or publisher of information posted by a third party. You can always sue the author if you want, but you can't sue RipOff Reports. The author is often anonymous, but that is another story. Well, let's look at what the Federal District Court of Utah had to say about this, and they do not agree. According to the order denying motion to alter judgment filed in August 27th of 2015, the court found that the website is not a neutral publisher and publishes negative content, so it can potentially get more by working through companies and people named in the reports to have the complaint edited and turn the report into an advertisement. That's interesting. The other arguments that Eddy claimed was the court has misapplied the Communications Decency Act, but the controlling authority of the 10th Circuit Court stated that the service provider is responsible for developing offensive content, and in quotes, if it in some way specifically encourages development of what is offensive about the content, which is what Eddy has created that website to do. He encourages it. He does not want fair comments. Matter of fact, his site refuses anything that may be positive. Now, to know Eddy is to hear his own words in interviews. So according to Eddy, the removal of false or defamatory content from RipOff Report is not possible because it is freedom of speech. On the other hand, even many fierce people on the internet who consider themselves victims of his website believe it is a scam conceived to extort money, much like the way I've been saying it's pure extortion. But this is the typical conversation with Eddy through an interview process. The interviewer says, "A page on your website accuses us of stealing money. Why?" Eddy says, "I don't care. I publish every review. I can say whatever I want because I am protected by the U.S. Constitution. I am not a terrorist, and I am not wanted by the FBI. We offer an important service to determine what is true and what is not true." The interview, "And how does this service work?" Eddy responds, "After your payment, we choose an independent arbitrator who will sort everything out." The interviewer ends by saying, "Wow." Now, why wow? It's extortion. The guy just admitted he's committing extortion. Well, what is somewhat gratifying is finally the federal appeal court in California affirms that RipOff Report victims have cause to sue for extortion and racketeering. It's about time. The problem is, why isn't the Fed stepping in to do this like they would in my previous videos I said against the mafia? They're not. So what I want to be able to do is provide some of the federal court cases in which they allege this is pure extortion. And he needs to either be removed from the internet or this site has to be taken down. I will once again put up the link for the GoFundMe account. I will once again put up my email address. And I once again ask you, as American citizens, don't sit back. Don't let this just happen. Start getting ahead of this, because one day it could happen to you or your family members. And then you're going to say, why didn't anybody do anything about this? Let's get active.